Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Council of Elrond, brought to you by the Mellon Heads. On this week's episode, we are answering some questions sent in by you guys. So we'll be discussing our podcast inspirations, most useless talents, but also some interesting Middle-Earth questions, such as who was Goldberry, and what our favourite Lord of the Rings swords are. There's plenty to unpack in this episode, so let's get into it. I'm Dave, and here with me as always is my co-host Johnny.
So it begins.
So just a quick shout out first. I want to say a massive thank you to Sean Campbell, who's been a listener for quite some time now, but he's just become a member on our Buy Me a Coffee account. So cheers, buddy. We really appreciate it and hope you continue to enjoy these episodes. If you want to become a member and get a shout out on our podcast, head over to buymeacoffee.com/the Mellon Heads. So thank you all so much for sending us in your questions. We are so sorry if we couldn't read out yours, but there was just so many to choose from. So the first question is from StickmanPG13 on Twitter, and he asks, what gave you the inspiration for this podcast?
Well, the simple answer would be my brother Dave gave me the inspiration for this podcast because...
That's me.
Because he called me one evening back in January and he just said, hey, would you like to do a podcast on Lord of the Rings? So it was, I didn't need to look too far for inspiration in that moment. But I'd say obviously the reason I said yes immediately was because usually when he calls me up or if I call him up, whatever we need to talk about usually ends up in being a Lord of the Rings conversation anyway. So it was pretty much a no-brainer. I just said, yeah, of course.
May as well record it.
Exactly. I said, well, we have our normal conversations anyway, so we could just put a microphone in front of us and see what happens. So yeah, you are my inspiration, Dave.
Oh, thank you. I do remember thinking about it and I was like, oh, I'll have to ask Johnny. And I actually wrote a few things down just in case I lost you straight away. It's like, so can we do a podcast? And then I wrote a few things down just in case he said no straight away. I can't remember what those things are, but I'm pretty sure they're saved on my my phone. What's it called? The notes file thing?
To try and convince me, was it?
Yeah.
Oh, in case I was being hard to get.
Yeah. And I remember at the time, because of course it's kind of a weird one to ask because, if someone just says, do you want to start a podcast when you've never done any sort of like content creating or anything like that before? Like neither of us has. So it was kind of out of the blue. And
my life is content creation.
It is now. But I remember at the time you were kind of like, oh yeah, okay. And I was like giving you some of the points and I was like, this is why it could be good and this is why it could be fun and this is the reason why some people might listen and whatnot. And you're like, yeah, okay. And then we kind of ended the call without a definite yes or no. But I think the next day you would like message me and you're like, so I have a couple of bullet points that we should do in our podcast. And I was like, oh, it's happening.
Yeah. And then Fabrizio Romano tweeted, here we go, podcast.
Yeah. Here we go. But yeah, it was, I think some of the reasons were, I listened to so many Star Wars podcasts, like, Star Wars Explained, and other things like Nerd Soup Podcast and Mr. Sunday Movies, who I really love. And they just kind of like talk about nerdy things, but they're not so formal and they're more just like happy-go-lucky, easy to listen, two lads having a chat. And I wanted to find a Lord of the Rings podcast like that, and I couldn't find any. Now there's lots of good ones out there, but they're very Tolkien lore heavy, and yourself, you listen to a few of them. And
yeah, that's a good point, and that's actually one of the things that I believe we spoke about on our first call when we decided whether or not we wanted to do a podcast. And I think that once you brought up the idea of a podcast to me, I thought, yeah, that's actually great, because I listened to a few different Lord of the Rings podcasts, but a lot of them are, as you said, it's like you're taking a Tolkien class and you need to be there with your notebook, and it's like, oh, if you didn't read the 1964 edition of the whatever, and you're like, oh, I don't have that version of the Red Book of the West March or whatever, and you're like, oh, well, you're not going to understand this entire lecture. You're like, oh crap. So I thought that was a little bit like, it didn't feel, well, I'm not speaking for all of them, but some of the ones that I've listened to didn't really feel too inclusive. I suppose that's the main thing that we wanted to do with this podcast, which was to bring Tolkien and Lord of the Rings to people who maybe you're complete like nerds like us, or maybe you've just seen the Lord of the Rings movies one time and you thought it was kind of interesting, and we want to be able to, help you guys understand what's going on behind the scenes and just to see why we enjoy it so much.
And be relatable as well.
Yeah.
And I think with the upcoming TV show, it was kind of a perfect time to start. But yeah, so that was kind of how we got the wheels in motion for this podcast. So thanks for the question. So the next question comes from Dank Ferrick on Twitter, and they ask, Sting, Glamdring, or Anduril? Which one would you choose?
I suppose you can't really beat Anduril, can you? I mean, it's so epic. It's such an awesome blade. Yeah, I mean, but then also I have Sting, which I bought in some random French market when I was about 13 or something. I was on holidays in France, and I was with my parents, and we were walking through this market, and I saw a proper replica of Sting, and I was like, I must have this sword. And so I just like begged my parents and convinced them, and eventually they bought it for me. And I don't know how I got it home in the carry-on luggage, but
back in those days,
you could get away with it. But so I have Sting, so that's always got it's got a special place in my heart. But I think my answer would have to be Andor, even though it's tough. Glamdring is also class.
Glamdring is pretty cool.
It's pretty cool, but I'd say my answer would be Anduril.
Yeah, I think mine would be the same. That Sting is now in my cubbyhole in my room, so
yeah,
I'm keeping it nice and I'm keeping it secret.
Yeah,
keeping it safe.
It has been passed down.
But I do you remember one Christmas I got Anduril, like a plastic Anduril when I was a kid, and it was probably taller than me. That was so cool.
Yeah, it was life size.
So I absolutely loved that. Yeah, and this is back when you and I shared a room, and like Mum and Dad would Santa would sneak into our room and put the toys at the end of the bed. And I remember just kind of waking up and there was a sword, like
a giant
up
sword
to my chest. Yeah, and I was like, "What the hell, Santa?"
We probably had like a 6 a.m. sword fight then.
Yeah, probably. So the next question comes from Instagram, and Ready Jelly asks, "Why do you guys sound so similar sometimes, but then so different at other times?" Very cryptic.
I don't know. It's a weird question, but
yeah.
I've got no answer for that one. We sound so similar because we're brothers, and I suppose we have similar accents, and I don't know. We were reared in the same household, but she said, or he or she said, that we sound so different at other times. So I don't know. Maybe I've lived in different countries, so maybe my accent has changed a little bit. But I think we sound fairly similar. We sound quite alike. So yeah, I've definitely had some friends of mine that listen to the podcast. They've definitely said to me, like, "Oh my God, you guys sound so similar. It's actually really difficult to tell each other apart." And I can see that for sure. Sometimes when we're editing, as Dave said, it's kind of like you hear somebody saying something and you're kind of going, was that me or was that him? And it's a bit weird, but I don't know. That's
if it was stupid, it was probably you.
Exactly. I was going to say something like that. I was going to say, if there's a really stupid comment, well, I'd be like, well, God, I hope that wasn't me.
Dakin Schultz on Twitter asks, "Who's each of yours favorite brother?"
Well, my favorite brother is definitely Boromir.
I would go for Faramir.
I mean,
just to be different.
What's his question? Is he asking us who do we prefer out of like? We have 3 brothers in our family. Is he asking about that, or is he asking?
Well, I don't know, because I don't think anyone would know how many brothers we have.
We've definitely mentioned that we have an older brother in more than one episode. So
or maybe
we have an older brother, Paul, and he hasn't been on any of these episodes yet. So maybe if we get him on, there'd be 3 of us all with the same voice, and that'd be extra confusing. But I don't know. I think we've mentioned him a few times, so I'm not sure what his question is. If when he said who's each of yours favorite brother, I thought he was like his kind of a jokey question to say. I prefer you or I prefer Paul or something like that. Like, so I was going to just keep it simple and say Boromir.
Very good. So Vectron5 on Twitter asks, if you could get any filmmaker to make a full film or TV series about any Tolkien story, who would you choose and which story? And then they also say hard mode besides Guillermo del Toro. So I don't know, would you have picked Guillermo del Toro? But
I mean, he's a great director, but I don't think I would have gone for him anyway, regardless. But
maybe just because of all the like special effects,
yeah,
and fantasy and all that kind of stuff.
Possibly. I mean, again, would have been a great choice. But
I think he wasn't he going to do the Hobbit movies at one point when Jackson
was he the original? Because Jackson got brought in like late on, didn't he?
I have a feeling. I'm just thinking of that now, but I have a feeling that he might have been attached to the movies, or movie, or two movies at that point. But yeah, I don't know.
Interesting.
Maybe Jeff Bezos doing the Silmarillion. That's what's happening right now.
Is that your answer?
Well, no.
You want Jeff Bezos to be the director?
Well, no. I suppose he's kind of the showrunner, isn't he? Or the show ruiner.
Find out. We'll see. Yeah. Not showrunner. He's just funding it. Like he's just He's just fronting the money. He's just throwing out a bit of pocket change to make this. But do you want to answer first?
I think maybe either Christopher Nolan or David Fincher. Probably Christopher Nolan. I don't really know. Like, it could be anyone, but it would have to be someone that's...
What story would you go for?
Well, I just wrote down the Children of Hurin because that's what I'm still stuck on, still reading, but I'm getting through it, and I think that would be a cool...
It's a class story.
Yeah, and it's so... It could be a TV series as well because...
Very episodic, yeah.
Yeah, and it's spanning over years and years. You could do adventures of Turin when he was younger, and then when he was older, and when he changes his name, and then becomes this and that, so...
Oh my God, you could have like...
I think it'd be class.
Yeah, all the names of Turin.
Turumbar.
Yeah, that was definitely one that I had considered for this answer as well, to do the Children of Hurin, because that's one of my favourite Tolkien stories. It's such a class book. So if you haven't read that, I definitely recommend the Children of Hurin. So if I'm not going to go for that one, I don't know. Well, first of all, director Christopher Nolan's a good shout. I'd considered him as well. I mean, I'm a big fan of Tarantino. I mean, maybe that's just a boring answer, but I just think that would be really cool as well to see like Tarantino doing a story about...
He could do the Lord of the Rings again, and it would just be completely different.
It would be completely different.
It would have to be 18s or rated R.
Yeah, but I was thinking of maybe something with... Like I was thinking initially maybe some stories, other stories like Children of Hurin, other stories from the Silmarillion, like Beren and Luthien or Fall of Gondolin or some stuff like that. But I think what would be really cool is to do some stuff that's actually in the Lord of the Rings that just didn't come out, like in the books of Lord of the Rings, but that didn't come out in the movies. For example, a take on the Grey Company, which is like, you know, Aragorn's gang
Dunedain.
of Dunedain. Like, so, and they kind of like, they're protectors of the Shire, and then they like end up fighting in the Pelennor Fields, and they're just a big army of badasses. And well, not a big army, they're only a small army. There's a small number of them, but
a small army of big asses.
Yeah. But I think Tarantino would be I maybe also Guy Ritchie would have that kind of cool style.
Yeah,
would be kind of cool. But I think for me personally, I'd go for Tarantino and maybe a story on the Grey Company.
Yeah, that's a great answer, and I love Tarantino as well. And one thing that Tarantino does so well, which would be perfect for Lord of the Rings or Tolkien stories, is dialogue. He could just have a scene that's 20 minutes long of just two guys having a conversation. And how cool would that be of Faramir and Frodo just having a conversation with Tarantino writing the script?
Yeah. I mean, that's one thing also that I really love from the books that doesn't really get like portrayed as well in the movies, where Faramir and Frodo having like just conversations, and kind of Frodo's almost on trial and Faramir's just sort of questioning him, and it's just it's so well done. So I think that would be really cool. I think Tarantino has got really great dialogue in his movies. So that would be my answer. But yeah, guys, to all of our listeners, that's a really good question. So we'd love to hear from each of you as well. Who would be your filmmaker of choice? to recreate one of Tolkien's stories, either, well, recreate Lord of the Rings or to create a different story from Tolkien's catalogue.
Very good. So the next question comes from Spaceport99 on Instagram, and they ask, favorite superhero?
For me, that's an easy one, and the answer is Batman.
Yeah.
I've all my life, I've been a huge Batman fan ever since I was a kid. That's watching Batman the animated series when I was a kid. That was like I was obsessed with that. The music in that show, just the kind of the dark sort of theme in it. It was just captivating for me. And then when it got a bit older, they'd like different versions of cartoon Batmans, and there was loads of cool ones. And yeah, I've just been kind of really into Batman. And like then, reading the comics, and I've read like quite a few of the graphic novels and things like that. So it's the only kind of superhero that I really kind of dug into and kind of got my hands dirty in it. So that's my answer.
Yeah, and DC's animated shows, they're so good. They can't really seem to get the movies completely right, maybe one or two, but they're very good with their animation.
Yeah, that's true.
And I would have a similar answer. Like, yeah, I've always been following behind in your footsteps, loving Batman, probably because you did as well. And similarly, I've anytime I see like a Batman miniseries or a little show on Netflix or Amazon or somewhere, I would click into it. Like Batman: The Killing Joke. I think I told you when I watched that. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah,
and I love the Joker as well. He's probably my favorite villain, like superhero villain. So they go hand in hand.
Exactly. Yeah. It's, what a villain he is. Well, there's a cool graphic novel that I've read just all about the Joker as well, and that's really awesome as well.
Cool. I also love from the MCU. I love Iron Man, which I think everyone does. I think Iron Man is kind of like he's kind of like a Cristiano Ronaldo in terms of the MCU. Like whenever I remember when he showed up in the first Spider-Man movie, everyone was like, "Oh my god, it's class!" It was kind of almost like the Spider-Man and Iron Man movie, even though he's only in it for like a total of 10 minutes or something. But it's just so cool to have him. He's like a cameo, and he probably brought more numbers to that movie. Like,
oh yeah, I mean, before Robert Downey Jr., Iron Man was just like,
oh yeah, he was nothing. Like,
really cool, interesting character. But I think like Robert Downey Jr. really brought that character to life and gave it such a depth and such a, I don't know, he's just completely captivating on camera. He just like holds your attention so well. He's so fast and sharp and quick-witted, and I don't know, he's just such a like not a good guy but so likable in some other ways as well. So yeah, he's like
the perfect character for him. Like,
yeah, exactly. So obviously I think this question was about your favorite superhero of all time, so I'd go back to my childhood because that's when I was watching cartoons and reading comics. And then, like, when the first Iron Man came out, was that 2008?
2008, yeah.
Yeah, so, I mean, I was already, like, 19
38 or something.
Yeah. I was an old man. So, I mean, I immediately fell in love with that character as well, but I would never say that it's never going to overtake my childhood love of a superhero.
Yeah.
But for children that were, like, very young kids when that first Iron Man movie came out, I could easily see them going down that route and saying, well, this is clearly the best superhero. And yeah, definitely. Spoiler alert, when he dies in Endgame, that was, I mean, man, that was a heavy moment. And I remember being in the cinema and there wasn't a dry eye in the cinema. It was just not even just a dry eye. You could barely hear the movie because of the like audible wailing that was going on around me. I was like, oh my God, this is
worse than a funeral.
It was much worse than a funeral. I was like, I've never been in a room with so much like loud crying going on. I was like, this is crazy. But yeah, so he really obviously connected with the audience, and people really fell in love with that character. So yeah,
big man in a suit of armor. Take that off. What are you?
Genius, billionaire, playboy, philanthropist.
Yeah, and you're right. Like Iron Man wasn't anything really before Robert Downey Jr.'s portrayal, because I believe Marvel actually sold most of their like big characters and only held on to the likes of Iron Man, and like Iron Man was like a C-list character. Like they sold Spider-Man to Sony, and they had to get him back after ages. They sold the X-Men to Fox, So they sold Fantastic Four. Like those were their big ones, really. Spider-Man, Fantastic Four, X-Men, and obviously they've been acquiring them back. But Iron Man was really a C-list character, and when
they couldn't offload it back in the day, or they couldn't get any money for it, so they just held on to him. Is it?
Yeah, maybe, or just they were like, right, we'll get some money for. Like I know Marvel was really in the shits in the 90s, so they were trying to get some money.
Really?
They're kind of like Barcelona now. Yeah, they were. That was the reason that Spider-Man was owned by Sony, and all the others that I mentioned.
I
they were probably just trying to. Yeah, they were just getting some money, and obviously now the MCU, when the MCU was formed in 2008, and they brought out the Iron Man movie and started off the franchise, they obviously started getting some of their own money back, and now they're able to buy they're currently like renting Spider-Man or whatever, but they got a weird deal with Sony. Yeah, there was a whole thing with Sony where they had like a contract where they could make, I think, 3 Spider-Man movies, and he could appear in like 3 other movies, so like Avengers and such. And that deal like ran out maybe about 2 years ago. And everyone was like, oh no, this is the end of Spider-Man, and there was a huge conflict. Sony were like, no, we're not giving you the rights to him anymore, but then they struck up a deal. So
yeah,
happy days again, but they
stuff.
still don't own him.
Yeah, well, Sony, I mean, they can see there's money to be made there, so they're probably going to just hold on to him and rent him out for as long as Tom Holland is like below the age of 45. He'll still be like kid Spider-Man.
Yeah, well, like they can always reboot it. Like they owned all the rights to the other ones as well. Andrew Garfield and Tom, the other lad. What's his name? I can't remember. Is it Tom?
Tobey Maguire.
Tobey Maguire, that's it. Well done. So moving on, Nathan M1K96 on Twitter asks, okay, this is a long enough question here, but if Tolkien grew up, say, in the last 30 years as akin to the time he grew up in, do you think he still would have written Lord of the Rings? If not, why? And if so, how similar or different do ye, in your opinion, feel it would be?
That's a good question.
Yeah, it is a good question.
Well, first of all, I think Tolkien was just a master in fantasy, and he used it then to escape from his reality. And I think nowadays there is as much a need, if not more, to escape from this current world and go to Middle-Earth. I, for one, certainly feel that that's the reason I keep going back to the trilogies, because I find peace in that fantasy world, and I think that's always going to be needed. That's never going to be surplus to requirements. That need to take a break from the world and like the amount of bad news that we get now every day on every sort of device. If you just go on Instagram, there's just, you can't go through 2 stories without somebody saying like, oh my God, they're burning cats in Indonesia. And you're like, kind of go, that's terrible. But I mean, I didn't come on Instagram I can't be an activist every single day. It's really hard to like escape just terrible news all the time. And sometimes you just need to, it's very important to stay informed about like the news and the current affairs of the world. But sometimes you just need a break, and you need for your own mental health to get away from everything. And I think that for me, Middle-Earth can give me that. So do I think he still would have written Lord of the Rings? Yes, I definitely do. And I think it would be somewhat similar because Middle-Earth is nothing like the world that Tolkien lived in when he was growing up. And so I think in a similar way, it's nothing like the world is now. So I don't think that he was really drawing on the realities of his situation to create Middle-Earth. I think he could have come up with that fantasy world, whether he was living 100 years ago, 300 years ago, or 200 years in the future.
Yeah. Like I was thinking the opposite of this answer, because I kind of think we talked about it in our episode on the Tolkien movie review, because Tolkien was actually, he was part of World War One, and he was probably greatly influenced off that. And like we've talked about how he said that he doesn't think there's any allegory, or he doesn't believe in allegory and all that kind of stuff, but he's going to write based off the experiences he had. And I don't know, like if if we look at the likes of George R. R. Martin, who was inspired by Tolkien, and he writes epic fantasy, that's the reason why we're getting to read books like or A Song of Ice and Fire and all that kind of stuff. If Tolkien was never born back then when he had the experiences he had, and then was born now, maybe there wouldn't have ever been anyone writing epic fantasy, because he kind of started the whole thing, right?
Yeah, well,
like, I know there was C.S. Lewis as well, but maybe not the same way.
And it was also like Beowulf. That was something that he got inspiration from as well, wasn't it, back in the day?
Yeah.
I mean, there's different ways to think about this question, and so it is an interesting question. But I think both answers have their own merits as well. And I think that
of course, yeah,
what you're saying about him being involved in the World War, obviously that's going to draw on his. That's going to be somewhat influential in his own writing. But I suppose I was thinking more about the fantasy world of Middle-Earth and how you definitely would have been able to create that. And then I think, like, if you are a genius like Tolkien was, I think if you have that mind to be able to be creative and be able to create languages and things like that, I don't think he's going to lose the ability to come up with some epic fantasy story. Maybe the story would have been different. Maybe the battle sequences would have been different because maybe he drew on his time in World War.
Of course. And the speech, of course, would have been completely different. The way
exactly.
he actually wrote. Like, little things like that. I think I was just coming at it from the angle, if nobody was there back in the 40s, 50s to write Lord of the Rings, and he was born in the 90s, let's say, he would have no inspiration to write an epic fantasy.
Well, I mean, Tolkien also did draw a lot of his inspiration on Norse mythology, and one of the things that he said about the reason why he created this whole fantasy world was because he didn't understand why England and the English language didn't have its own type of mythology like the Greeks or the Norse. And he said that, like, all the different types of gods and all that. That was, he didn't understand why the English language and the English country hadn't created their own type of mythology. And he really wanted to, be the representation for his home country of England to say, this is our fantasy and this is what we have been able to create, to kind of maybe sort of to compete with the other mythologies that have existed for so long. And he wanted to say, this is kind of, I'm going to be the creator of the English mythology, which will be Middle-Earth. So, yeah. I don't know. It's a good question. And we could debate about it for a long time, but I suppose we should keep going with the next questions.
Yeah. Again, we probably could have just done a whole podcast episode on that. Yeah. So if you guys want to send in your thoughts and opinions on that as well, that would be great. But we're going to move on anyway. So the next question comes from Benji Man Cave on Instagram.
Great handle.
And I'm loving some of these names. And they ask, what recent TV show have you watched that made you go, wow?
Recent TV show. The first one that springs to mind is, and it's maybe not so recent, it's maybe in the last 2 or 3 years, would be The Boys.
Oh yeah.
I think that I definitely, the first few episodes when I was watching that, I was really thinking, wow, because if you haven't seen The Boys, shout out to Carl Urban, AMR, who also,
my man.
My
man Carl Urban.
If there's no actors from Lord of the Rings in a current TV show, I'm not watching it.
Denethor is also in it as well, who plays his daddy.
Yeah, he is.
John Noble,
a brilliant actor as well. So basically the premise of The Boys is that it's a superhero show, and you're living in a world where superheroes exist, but it's kind of more the realities of what would happen in a world where superheroes were just another thing that existed in the world, and where it's not all just
like celebrities, really.
Yeah, they're just kind of celebrities, and kind of even the politics that went into it. Like, again, I'm not going to be giving away spoilers if you haven't seen it, but where there's someone, some governor of some state is having a meeting with the head of the superhero company where all the superheroes basically work, and he's saying, okay, in our state we really need a superhero to come and help us out, not just because of like crime, but also because of public image, and we want to up our image. We want to seem like we're a better state than we are, or maybe whatever.
Yeah.
And so they like rent out a superhero. They're like, okay, we'll give you a contract. You can take this superhero for 2 years.
love that,
And
like.
it's really interesting and it's really, really cool.
All the wheeling and dealing.
Yeah.
You're like, this would definitely happen.
And like all the superheroes are dicks as well. So that's kind of like,
Yeah.
that's also just a complete, like, it's not normal. So when you said like, what made you go, wow, that's definitely one that I would say I was on the top of my list.
Yeah, like how gruesome it is and how hardcore and yeah.
Also for was it Christmas last year? Dave, you gifted me a graphic novel of The Boys, and that was class as well. So very, very good.
Did you finish it?
Oh yeah, I did, of course.
Oh, good. Yeah, class. I'll have to borrow it off you next time you're over here.
And one of the characters actually made a little surprise appearance in the Black Widow movie recently.
Oh,
which
whom? Oh yes,
I told you about
Red Guardian, isn't it?
Yeah, Red Guardian, but I believe he had a different, more crude name in the graphic novel. But anyway, he's the same Russian superhero, the kind of Russian Captain America. Yeah, he shows up in The Boys graphic novel.
See, people love that cozy feeling that Soup's given. Some golden cunt to swoop out the sky, save the day, so you don't gotta do it yourself. But if you knew half the shit they get up to, fucking diabolical.
Cool. Yeah, I absolutely love The Boys as well, and can't wait for season 3. Should be coming out soonish. Maybe in the next 2 months.
Exactly. Yeah, soonish.
Probably by the time this podcast drops. Yeah, I wasn't really thinking of like those kind of big TV shows. Like I would consider The Boys as probably one of my all-time favorites. Coming, you know, I assume in a few years' time I'll be looking back and going, right, Game of Thrones, Breaking Bad, The Boys, certain things like that. But I just went for one that I have talked to you about recently called Mayor of Easttown, which I just thought was brilliant. It's a Sky Atlantic, and it's only 7 episodes, and it's all about Kate Winslet as kind of an old school depressed cop who's trying to figure out a murder in a really depressing town, and her name is Mayor. She's not the mayor, so
okay.
It's kind of confusing. But yeah, it's only 7 episodes, but it's absolutely brilliant, and I would highly recommend anyone to watch it. It's Sky Atlantic, but it's also is it HBO? It's a HBO production, so it's brilliant. Yeah, so highly recommend that.
Yeah, you can usually trust HBO.
Yeah.
Cool. I'm not going to comment on Dave's choice because I have not yet seen that, but I'll definitely. It's on my list. It's on my list of things to watch, so I'm going to be watching that soon.
Definitely, yeah. So the next question comes from Strider on Twitter, and they ask, what happens to Saruman after Sauron is destroyed? So, Johnny, I think this is a very simple question for you to answer.
My first answer would be to go on to our list of podcasts, and you'll find that we have actually a full episode dedicated to that very question. So that would be my first answer to you, that you should be going in there and searching for, I believe, what was the title? The Scouring of the Shire, or something like Saruman's Death and the Scouring of the Shire, or
the Sauron's Demise and the Scouring of the Shire, I believe.
Yes. So it was one of our earlier episodes. So go back a few months, and you'll find an episode on there. But to give you a very quick recap, or do you want to give a quick recap, Dave?
You'll hear it all in the episode, but basically, Scouring of the Shire, Grima cuts Saruman's throat, and happy days.
Exactly. So Saruman and Grima escape from the Tower of Orthanc. They make their way to the Shire, and they kind of try to take over the Shire, and Grima ends up slitting Saruman's throat. So a nice gruesome way for him to go. Not exactly the same way that he dies in the movie, in the extended cut, but equally as gruesome. So that's cool.
Very good. So on to the next question. And another Twitter handle that I like, Die asks, if you could cast a gender bend version of Lord of the Rings movies, who would some of your top picks for the roles be? Asking as someone who regularly gender bends the books as I read them.
So gender bend is, I'm assuming, just like taking like Aragorn and saying, okay, if Aragorn were a girl, who would play him in that situation? Yeah. So just changing the gender of each of the characters. Right. Sorry, I'm not exactly an expert. I'm a
Gender bending your mind.
I'm a layman when it comes to gender bend. I've never heard this term before, but cool.
A lame man, more like.
I would say I would love to have a character like, I love Judi Dench. Judi Dench is an epic actress. I think she's fantastic. I love her.
Wonder who she would be.
Yeah, who do you think? I mean, Gandalf would be Judi Dench. She'd be like, Jandalf, if I have Judi Dench. I don't know. I mean, I think as an older character, just like speaking down to people, and I love the way that like in James Bond, she just like talks down to Bond. She's like, oh, geez, Bond, get your head out of your ass. Come on,
James.
You know, get it together. I mean, she's probably too well spoken to be Gandalf, but she could definitely get her some lessons in mumbling, and basically the opposite of elocution lessons. Just be like, okay, come on, Judy, you need to just stick a few marbles in your mouth and just start saying like things like that, like and so I'd go for Judi Dench as Gandalf. Let me see, I'd go for Aragorn. I don't know, maybe someone like Natalie Portman. I really like Natalie Portman. Again, I think she's like in movies like V for Vendetta, she's just really strong and courageous, and she's a bit of a hero in that movie. So I think she could be a good Aragorn. For Pippin, I was thinking someone maybe Zendaya, who's pretty. I think she's funny. I think she's very funny in
Spider-Man.
Spider-Man. I think I like her. I like her sense of humor in that.
Yeah.
I've seen her in other movies where she's completely different, and so maybe not. But I think her like portrayal from Spider-Man, I think that kind of style should be a funny Pippin kind of character as well.
She'd be very tall for Pippin as well.
A little bit tall.
I think she's
a little bit tall,
huge,
but I mean,
like.
Yeah, I know, but sure.
Maybe not huge,
I mean,
but she's taller than Tom Holland, so that's probably not hard.
It's probably not hard. But I mean, Billy Boyd is not actually, 3'3" or whatever he's supposed to be as a
he's 3'7".
Hobbit, so he's 3'7".
Pushing 3'8".
Who else did I go for? I thought of a couple more. Maybe Lucy Liu. I thought she'd be a class Boromir. Again, proper warrior in things like Kill Bill. She's such a cool fighter, and again, I think she's just a great actress. And I thought maybe someone like Anne Hathaway for Frodo.
Okay,
Just kind of,
she's got the same eyes, I suppose.
Kind of the eyes and the kind of, she can do that good look where she doesn't know what's going on.
She's got the pale features as well, and kind of dark eyebrows, and that's a good shout. When you said Lucy Liu there, I was thinking she would be a Legolas for me. Really,
yeah.
I feel like Legolas has that kind of fighting style of I don't know what Lucy Liu's fighting style is. It Taekwondo or I don't know, something like that. But
yeah, no, that's actually really good. I think she'd be a class Legolas as well. But then I thought, just for the reason of blonde Legolas being a famous blonde, I just said I'd go for someone like Scarlett Johansson as a Legolas.
I thought that too. Yeah.
So I mean, she's a famous blonde, and also she kicks ass in Marvel movies. So she'd be well up for the task of doing all those flips and spins that Legolas does.
Very true. You picked a lot more than me. I had
sorry.
I don't know. I was thinking of Gandalf, and for some reason I stumbled on a picture of Jamie Lee Curtis, and I was like, if I just put a beard in front of her, like she's got the same kind of skinny feature. I don't know. She kind of looks like a female Ian McKellen, so I kind of thought she could have done well. I know she wouldn't really have the accent, but and then for me, Aragorn as well. There's only one person for Aragorn. That was Angelina Jolie. Just basically
that'd be
Mr.
good.
and Mrs. Smith. She kicks ass in that, and she can definitely have that kind of sad demeanor.
Her presence on screen as well.
Yeah. She can just, and she's in Resident Evil as well, and sorry, not Resident Evil, Tomb Raider, and she kind of has that just, she doesn't have to say anything, kind of like Viggo Mortensen. She can just be like staring and not saying anything, but she commands respect. And
she's just a great presence, and she's a wonderful actress as well. Yeah, she's really good.
And finally, I had Grima would be Tilda Swinton. They both have that same kind of pale skin and that. I don't know.
Poor Tilda.
I know, but look, I don't make the rules.
I know, yeah, but I also see it. Yeah. That's a good shout.
Yeah, so if any of you guys have any other gender bends, send them our way. We didn't do any like gender bends to males, so I didn't think of any, but yeah, who would you guys think would be a good Arwen or Galadriel or whatever?
Or Eowyn.
Yeah. Or Rosie Cotton. Or Lobelia Sackville Baggins.
Yeah, or extra number 2 at the beginning.
Cute hobbit in scene 3.
Yeah, in scene with the falling table after the dragon firework flies overhead. That's how specific it was. Right, okay. Anyway, moving on.
So the next question is like to like things on Twitter, and they ask, which Lord of the Rings Lego set is your favourite?
I'm going to throw this one over to you, Dave, because I don't think I've ever had a Lord of the Rings Lego set, so no answer.
I too have never had a Lord of the Rings Lego set, and I've been in Smith's a few times, which is an Irish toy chain over here, and like sometimes I like to go look at the Legos, but I can't even remember any. But I do remember on Instagram seeing a picture of, it's not a Lord of the Rings set, but some fan has made up this huge Helm's Deep. It's almost like I don't know, it's a creation. It's like a huge model, and it'd be bigger than the size of this table. Well, no one can see this table. It's huge basically, and has like thousands of urukai outside it. You can't buy this thing. It's clearly this guy just went and got loads of different sets and put them together, and he probably made a lot of the armor themselves. I think all the urukai have the actual like swords and stuff. But yeah, seeing those pictures, every time I see that on Instagram, I'm always zooming in and trying to look at the different areas of the battlefield. But yeah, I don't know. I don't really know any cool Lego sets, but if anyone knows any cool Lego sets, send them in so I can play with them, because I really want to. I really want to do that.
We accept gifts.
Yeah. So the next question comes from The Breaker 28 on Instagram, and they ask, "What are your most useless talents?" Well, John.
I feel I have a special ability to judge which foot I will use to disembark from a travelator in airports. I think if you know what a travelator is, it's like the like
slow ground that moves.
The ground that moves. It's like an escalator, but it's flat. I think when I'm on one of those, I can tell from about 100 meters off exactly which foot I'm gonna use to like get off that. So it's a pretty impressive talent.
Wait, so when you're just walking along that, you're like, it's going to be my left foot that disembarks.
Yeah, I do it every time.
Really?
I'm like, I know I'm going to be stepping off this with my left foot. I don't know. It's just a weird thing that I always have in my head.
Or is it just you have a 50-50 chance of getting it right?
I don't know. I think I could just judge it well, and I'm expecting to make it into the 2024 Olympics, so I'm expecting that call up anytime.
Where you have to shout out the answer before. But like, do you not think in your last 3 or 4 steps you can kind of alternate the speed of your steps to make it so that it's your left or your right?
Is that maybe what happens? I don't know. Maybe it's just my brain playing tricks on me, but I don't know. I
know what I'm going to be thinking of next time I'm on a travelator anyways.
Yeah, I don't know. This is just a stupid one that I was like, I don't know. I can't think of any. Oh, I've got another useless talent, which is I can vibrate my eyeballs.
Oh yeah.
Which,
I've seen that. It's pretty gross.
I haven't done that in years, but I used to be able to do that where I would just sort of I don't know. I'm also pretty good like moving my eyebrows. I can do like all sorts of different weird movements with them.
True.
And so yeah, eyebrows and eyeballs. I've got lots of talents up there, but unfortunately that doesn't really get me. It doesn't pay the bills. So
from the nose down, you are talentless.
Exactly, and from the eyebrows up.
Yeah, that's true. You've got the most talented eyes.
I've got 1.5 inches of my entire being is where all the talent resides.
It's the breadwinning part of your body.
Yeah.
I have, as you know, I've got that weird thing where I can make my finger look dislocated when I can push it out and push it in on both hands, which is very, very useless.
Push it out, push it in. Let me begin.
And I also have that weird thing that I can do with my throat where I go. So it's a weird.
I absolutely hate that.
You used to always think I was grinding my teeth or something. So
No, that's something else that you used to do in your sleep. It's a completely different sound.
I don't think I can't. Like,
Oh, you did.
I can't grind my teeth. I'm not able to. I don't know how to grind my teeth.
Well, you did something weird when Dave and I used to share a bedroom, and he would make some weird noises in his sleep, and I used to like hit him with a pillow while he was asleep and tell him stop making so much noise, and he'd just wake up in a daze, be like, "What the hell's going on?
Is it Christmas?" Anyways, Pamela Barone on Twitter asks, so who or what was Goldberry and her mother? I have theories, but I would like to hear y'all's scholarly info.
Scholarly info. That's what I'm chuckling at the moment because
Yeah.
I would love that, and
I can give you info.
Very honored by I'm very honored by your flattery. Dave and I are definitely not scholars. We're far from it, and we're just big fans of Lord of the Rings and of Tolkien, and we just want to have honest conversations here. But the thing is, you'll probably hear stuff on this that maybe you could go back and research yourself, and you'd be like, those guys didn't actually know that was right or not. So we could be way off. But we're just going to give our opinions. But so to answer this question, it's quite a tough one because I don't believe there's any correct answers out there. Really, we don't really know too much about Goldberry or her mother, because Goldberry is the river daughter, so her mother is the river, apparently, according to that logic. And I don't know, and I'd love to be able to give you my deepest thoughts on this type of answer, but I've never really actually contemplated it. I've never really thought about it too much. I kind of just, I don't know, she's kind of, her and Tom, Tom is one that people have, thought about more and mused about who he could be and whatever, and we've got a full episode on who Tom Bombadil could be, so go check that out, guys.
Another plug.
But as opposed to his wife Goldberry, she's always been kind of a mystical character as well, and we don't know anything about her origin. She just seems to be some sort of like a nature spirit, but I kind of like the idea of it just being mysterious and unknown. So as I said, I've never really thought too much about it, and yeah. I don't know, Dave, do you have anything to add to that?
No, but I like the way you said that, yeah, she is a bit of an anomaly. A monopoly. And I think it's cool that it's left that way. And I know there are theories about Goldberry and Yavanna and all that kind of stuff, but I don't know. And I don't really know because I haven't read that much about it. So
we know more about Yavanna than we do about Goldberry.
Yeah,
for sure. That's we actually know something about her, whereas Goldberry, we don't really have that much information about her at all. So I do like the question though. I like that it's a break from the usual question of who do you think Tom Bombadil is, because Tom hogs all the action and his wife Goldberry doesn't get too many people caring or wondering about who she is. So it's nice to give Goldberry a shout out and some love. So go Goldberry.
Go Goldberry. Well guys, that's a wrap on this episode of the Council of Elrond. We hope that you've enjoyed our answers to your great questions, but don't worry, we have a part 2 coming out next week, where we will answer such questions as, what are Iluvatar and Melkor doing in the Void? And also, what's the dumbest way you guys have injured yourselves? So make sure to tune into that and maybe we'll answer your question. If you'd like to ask us a question or get in touch, you can check out all our links in the podcast info section. If you want to sponsor us, head over to buymeacoffee.com/the Mellon Heads and we'll give you a shout out there. Until next week guys, see you later.